Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning if you're on the East Coast or I guess lunch hour, West Coast, where I am right now. It's still early in the morning. Sorry about that. My name is Kelly Paris. I'm the Director of Special Projects and the Secretary for Digital District. Today we're going to be talking about how to manage expectations in the digital space. And I understand this is a very broad topic that can take many different forms. Luckily, we have a wonderful panel that is going to break it all down for us and sort of get into the nuances of all the things that can mean. Before we get going, a few housekeeping things. If you have questions during the panel, please feel free to ask us on Twitter using hashtag #DDManage. You can also ask questions using the contact form on our website, which is thedigitaldistrict.org. Feel free to tweet along with us as well. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jason Nellis, who will be our moderator for today. Jason's background took him to places like Hulu, PBS, and Fosterly before he went and founded Overachiever Media. So Jason, over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks for the handoff, Kelly. Welcome, everybody. We're looking forward to a great panel, whether it's lunchtime for you or your morning coffee. Today we've got two folks here who I would say are certainly experts in their fields when it comes to setting expectations and managing people through the various processes of consulting work and marketing and all sorts of relationship management in between. A little bit about me very quickly. As mentioned previously, I was one of the early folks at Hulu, worked there for some time, now currently at Overachiever Media, which is a DC-based branding and content marketing organization. We work with brands like Vimeo, local startups, local businesses, and everything in between. But it's not about me. Let me pass it off. Let's start with Ryan. If you'll do a quick intro of yourself, and then my brain suddenly just totally went flat. I'm so sorry. Ryan first, then Elly, and then we'll jump into questions. Forgive me.
Great. So my name is Ryan Craven, and I am a digital planner at Wyden & Kennedy out in sunny Portland, Oregon. I've worked in advertising for 7 years at some various different shops, from a startup to a larger independent agency. So I'm looking forward to being on the panel and talking to you guys about managing expectations.
Excellent. Elly, you're up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elly Deutch, and I'm a digital marketing consultant and strategist. I've worked on the team side of sports and digital marketing and social media. I've worked for large agencies, Weber Shan, Wiki Energy, BBDO, Priority Sports and Entertainment, and I am now a consultant and also leading the team at Garrett Popcorn Shops, headquartered in Chicago.
Very cool. Well, let's get started with talking about what we're talking about. My first question is when somebody uses the phrase setting expectations, what does that mean to you? And feel free to jump in, either of you. Are we talking about everything from specifics of the contract? Are we talking about just the basic relationship management? When somebody asks you about setting expectations, what does that mean to you?
I think.
Go ahead, Elly. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, ultimately, that means, how do we define ROI for our company online? At the end of the day, it's all about building awareness and community, but people want to see that actual conversion rate into how much products or services are sold. But of course, it's so important to understand your strategy, your marketing objectives, your online purpose and persona, and kind of infuse that all together to create a plan that allows you to be more strategic and really understand, what you can do and the impact that you can have online.
Yeah, and I'll just double down on that. I think similarly to what Elly said is just setting goals up front and making it very clear communication. At least for most of us, we're in the client service business, so making sure that the client is clearly communicating what their goals are, and if maybe those goals are a little squishy, helping them guide them towards a more clear goal and making sure that the campaign is then set up in the right direction.
Sure. So it's as much the I guess the outer structural shell of the relationship, as well as sometimes getting into the nitty-gritty. Can each of you talk a little bit about what are some of the things that some of the guidelines or rules that you look to establish at the beginning of any professional relationship? Do you start with role establishment? Do you look a little bit more towards the larger, this is the objective of the project? What are the important details to nail down first as you're getting started in any new professional engagement?
I would say just to start, it's always nice at least coming from more of a high-level branding perspective, to have a brief and a target audience. And we like to build backwards from the audience perspective. Goals are generally built into that, whether it's just building goals to target a certain audience or convert a specific audience. But having a brief that the client is comfortable with, and because sometimes there's multiple levels of clients that you're dealing with, so you want to make sure that they're on board with what goal they're bringing to the table and what the agency or social media professional or whatever the project is geared towards is setting them up to succeed. So setting those clear expectations up front, and if those don't happen, then making sure that you're circling back and asking the right questions. So if there isn't a clear KPIs up front, maybe making initial suggestion or kind of building the case for what you believe the goal should be, and then making it clear that obviously the client is going to be the one that makes the final call, but if they're looking for your expertise, you're willing to toss that in up front.
Mm-hmm.
And to add to that, I definitely think it's important for you to understand what the goals and objectives are of your company first, and your marketing team and PR and communication strategy before you dive into social. A lot of companies that I've worked with actually don't have that put together. They know what it is kind of philosophically, but they've never written it down and done a creative brief or anything like that. So once you have a grasp of really what it is that you want to do and the purpose and intention of your company, and the objectives, then you can actually go into creating that strategy or brief on what you want to do in social, and eventually tie that into your goals and your target markets and how you're going to connect with your audience. So it's all kind of a cyclical process. It's ever evolving, just like social media. It's so important to understand that what you write in stone today is going to be different tomorrow or 10 months from now or 10 years from now, and just keeping that top of mind and knowing that you have to grow with the new technologies and updates and things that happen in social, but understanding, first and foremost where your objectives lie and how you're going to connect with your consumers and your audiences.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, I mean, I've worked from giant corporations down to smaller startups, and not everybody has a brief. Even some of the biggest corporations will sometimes give you a project without a brief, and it's up to you to help bring that back and say, well, can we have a brief? Can we get a target audience? Can we kind of drill down on what your objectives are? Because digital is such a broad space, you can do almost anything. So if you can at least hone in on where you want the campaign to go, it can help a lot in terms of, especially when things can get a little more chaotic closer to when a campaign is launching or things and deadlines start to mount up. So asking the right questions up front can really help and kind of point you in the right direction.
Sure, absolutely. So we're talking a lot about sort of working with the client, working with clients, to not only, ensure that the scope is appropriate, ensuring that there's a very targeted, process, problem, attack, solution. But one of the things I think that I imagine viewers may be interested in that I'd love to hear your thoughts on is, how much of my cards do I show, right? If I'm for example, right now I'm a one-man shop, do I set expectations with the clients early on that, I'm a one-man shop, I have my limits, there's only so much I can do, or do I say, I may be a one-man shop, but I've got, 20 different subcontractors I can call out to at any time, and we can figure, let's build now a little pricing structure around that. I mean, how much of your, I guess the question is, in your experience, is it better to be upfront and say, this is exactly the shop that you're hiring and this is what we can do after, or do you sort of, do the sort of like, yeah, we can do all of it, and then you on your side, sort of take care of things as necessary? Where's the flexibility, necessary there, and where is it limited, I guess is my question.
I'd say, at least from my perspective, it's been a couple years since I worked at a big shop right now, but in the past, I mean, you always ask questions that a client will ask questions, and maybe they want a POV on something that you don't have experience in, or they want you to reach out to clients or to a vertical that you've never actually worked with yet. And I think it's a lot of it is just the trust with the client, whether it's a new relationship or an old one. How close you are with them, that relationship is something that you're going to have to customize based on how well you know that person. So if it's a client that you trust and that trusts you, I think it's okay to be more straightforward. But at the end of the day, you really want to sell yourself, and I think a lot of us are assuming that when it comes to digital, we have enough experience and we have enough expertise that you're able to go in and at least create a POV or do enough to make sure that you're leading them in the right direction. You never want to oversell yourself, but at the same time, if you're confident enough that you can come back with and do the project, whether it's reaching out to a third party to address their issues or just going through the process to make sure that their business goals are met, I'm not sure that it's still in the client interest. I think you just have to keep that in mind. It's still client service.
Absolutely. Elly, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, from a brand perspective, if you're personally speaking on behalf of a brand or a company or anything, and not necessarily, or even if you are on the client side and acting as that, it's just important to understand all the different variables that are out there and platforms and channels that you can use, and figure out which questions you need answers to. So it's not always like we have to be everywhere on social. There's a lot of different platforms that have a lot of different niches and a lot of different functionalities. And if you know what like Ryan was saying, what questions you need to ask in order to fulfill those intentions, it's best for you to really understand the whole grasp of everything before you, say we're going to be on every single channel and we're going to be doing all these different things and trying to create different programs. The extent of your brand or the company that you represent. So I say shoot the moon, go for whatever you can, and really try to get some creative, out-of-the-box ideas. And if you run into limitations, that's when you bring in vendors or partners or other platforms that can assist you with more of those technological-minded initiatives to give you the answers to questions.
Well,
sorry, just to jump in again. I think that also just brings back to the education factor when it comes to digital in general is ongoing. You have to be constantly teaching and learning all of the newer and maybe like answering those questions before they come up. So if a client asks a question about something, it should be, I feel like it's our job to be on the hunt for those questions before they're even asked. So we should be able to be in an ongoing research mode, whether it's looking in the trades or making sure that you're staying on top of the latest tech news, so that when those questions come up, you at least have an idea or a point of view built in, and then you can go off and do more research. But I always feel like it's best just to keep that education going. We always have to be learning in this industry. Sure.
Well, and the best thing you can do, is stay on top of the news and read blogs and articles and white papers. I take 15, 30 minutes every morning before I dig into my email or anything like that, and I look at my RSS feed full of blogs or tweets from different people and influencers that I follow or I put on specific lists. So if you take the time to do the research and put the right technology in place on the forefront, you'll save a lot of time and energy, and then you can scroll through and say like, oh great, there's this TechCrunch article, there's a Mashable article that I don't need to read, there's something else going on here, oh the Twitter profiles just totally changed, and now I need to have all my clients prepared for what's happening with the new imagery structure. So it's making sure you're ahead of the game and knowing what's happening ultimately before it happens, or before your client would come to you and say, hey, what's this new thing? Like, have you heard of it? And if you say no, you're kind of in a bad position because it makes you look like you don't know what you're doing. So it's important to make sure you're always on top of what's happening in the ever-evolving social space.
All right, well, let me turn it back to you on that one, and let me just say for the record, by the way, that we're 15 minutes in, and here I was so worried that I might have to vamp. Let me ask you this, and I want to start with you, Elly, since you just brought it up.
Sure.
You have to say no at some point. You can't say yes to everything. You cannot. Nobody, no matter how big your shop is, ultimately can take on everything. So where do you say no? Where do you put those roadblocks up? And how do you communicate to clients that they're in their own best interest and that they're for their own good?
100% leads back to the education answer. Yes, you do have to say no at some point. Not everything is possible, unfortunately. Even though I said shoot the moon, you have to understand what's best for the client and what's best for the budget that you've set too. So if they, I've been with Fortune 500, 100 clients, and they blow through their year budget in Q1, and then they say, crap, what do we do now? And it's like, well, you need to set the scope and manage the client back on how they're managing you, and realize that these little changes or ideas here and there, they're great, but is one Facebook post going to change the world at the end of the day? I would hope so, but you have 50 other posts going up this month. You know, you got to really put it in perspective of all the different programs and initiatives and campaigns that you have, as well as, you know, the tactical strategy that you're implementing, and just figure out, you know, what's going to be the right thing to say yes to and no to. And I would say go with your instinct. That's really the most important thing. If you're on top of your social game and digital game and you know what's currently happening in the space, I mean, taking the time to, like that Twitter example, to be prepared for the new profile changes, something like that, it takes you 5 minutes versus, oh crap, we're going back and forth and we have to figure out what the client wants and blah, 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 blah. You know, if you took 5 minutes ahead of time and sent the client 2 examples and said, this is what we're thinking, what do you think, new profile designs are coming, and then gave them the whole reasoning and background and links to the actual Twitter about section and everything that's talking about the new redesign, like that's a perfect example and relevant because it just happened. So something like that is just all about preparedness and education. And if you can't do it through emails or phone calls, you know, get on a Hangout, get on a Skype call, go into their offices, take them out to lunch, do a touch base, maybe even coffee with them once a month if they're in your location, or, you know, do it online. Try to think of fun ways to create and build that relationship with your clients or the companies that you represent, and not just have it be, you know, after the fact, here's some education on something and a white paper you can read and blah, 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 and something that no one's ever going to eventually dig through.
Yeah, Ryan, what's your answer? Oh, that was...
Sure. No, I think she hit on everything that I was going to touch. The only thing that I would add is just when you're setting up and decisions are being made from the very start, I like to make sure that we're setting up, when you make a decision, here are the consequences. You don't necessarily have to, you can always make recommendations, but we like to go in and set up, here are your options, like option A, option B, option C. Here's my recommended option, and then here's the consequences of each of those actions. So later on, once you're saying no, but referencing all the decisions that have been made for the campaign and the consequences that you set up to begin with. So it's really never saying no. It's more just reminding the client or whoever is the decision maker, here's the decisions that we made, here's the reasons why we made them, and then this is where we're at now. So you're always moving forward. You never really want to focus too much on, we blew through the budget, oh no, what are we going to do? Because hopefully at that point you've set up, here's why we made that decision to begin with, and here's where this leaves us, and here's our recommended moving steps going forward. So it's always, and the relationship is a huge part of that, because you want to be able to be comfortable telling the client what the real deal is. You don't want to make, and sugarcoating and client service is always in the best interest if you have a good relationship. So at the end of the day, the client, both of you are looking for the best interest of the brand or the company. So you just want to make sure that you're always on the same page, and really making clear communication a priority from the beginning.
Absolutely. So I think a very comprehensive strategy for a lot of folks there. I just want to remind everybody that on hashtag, or actually on hashtag, I'm a little tired today, apparently, my coffee. On Twitter, if you're following us, hashtag DDManage. We have got a lot of great questions coming in. One question from Twitter that we would love to talk about. Where do you find that clients or brands lack strategy or vision using social media? Where's the biggest disconnect? So let's talk about that a little bit from how do you set the expectations specific to social media, and how do you help them, where do you find that they need the most help to get their expectations in line?
Well, I mean, I think lacking strategy is lacking knowledge. So not having the right consultant or agency or person in-house that can help you really fully understand social media and the purpose and intention that you should have, and figuring out the best strategy possible for your company. It's hard to say, well, we're a brand new startup or we're a huge corporation and we haven't done social before, but everybody else is doing it, so let's just jump right in. It's hard to say what's next without having somebody that has been in the digital space that knows kind of what expectations that you would have that can, whip out a Facebook page or a Twitter profile bio or something like that in 5 seconds. And I've seen, I've even had clients that have tried to set things up on their own and ask for things, or trying to find old YouTube videos, and they said, we've been searching for days, we can't find this information, and then I go in and I click and I know exactly where it is because I was the one managing that, or I was the one that was putting the strategy and the videos and the whole digital marketing production together. And I think, it's that knowledge, it's that education. So immersing yourself in the digital space, going to networking events like Digital District or Social Media Club or anything that happens in your communities, and trying to get to conferences and events and be with the thought leaders and the speakers and authors and bloggers and everybody that is going to help you learn more about the space.
Yeah, and there's not a lot else I can add other than the education is really key, and whether it's social or anything digital, video, display, these are all tools to accomplish a goal. So making sure that it's understood that when someone comes up to you and says, just put this on Facebook, that is not a strategy, and that is not something that generally makes sense given...
Now hang on a second, I have to interrupt you. I mean, if you just put it on Facebook, it doesn't magically go viral?
Yeah, exactly. Or build me one of those Facebook apps that I keep hearing about. Or these are things that
the hand wave.
Yeah, there's
a lot of that.
Yeah, or the licking your screen with the Skittles example from way back in the day. There's all sorts of cool apps that creative agencies have come up with. All of those things were part of a global strategy or a broader strategy, and they're accomplishing something for that company. Too often, especially with smaller startups or people who are just new to the space, they just want it, like Elly said, just dive right in, and that can oftentimes be the exact opposite of what they're doing. They should take their time, they should set up goals, and slow and steady, especially when it comes to building a brand, building a message and a voice on these social channels.
And one more thing on that, and Jason, you brought this up, but I can't tell you the number of clients I've had that have said to me, oh, we're making a viral video. And I'm like, well, that's not a strategy that you can just do. You have to have a really creative, awesome idea that's organically going to grow and spread because it becomes a hit across social channels and any kind of digital marketing outlets. And I've seen people make those viral videos that they claim they're going to make, and then they get 100 views or something like that, and they're disappointed. And I think it's because, like you were saying, Ryan, it's understanding the full scope and having that purpose within what you're doing and the strategy in place before it happens. If you want to go start up on social tomorrow, if you don't have a strategy, take another month or two to put it together, or however long it's going to take you before you launch. Because if you preemptively try to, gain followers and everything, and try and talk with your fans and do a campaign, and you don't have anybody to talk to, or there's no purpose for you to be online yet, then it just kind of falls short, and all of those efforts and time that you spent putting together that promotion or campaign or even just content is gonna, inevitably flop. So take the time. Really, that's what it's all about. If you need to have 2 days at a conference to really learn, or take a workshop, or do a training seminar with some expert in the field, or read a book, whatever it is, you got to find the time to teach yourself or the client or who's ever helping with the social strategy, and put it together and use the resources that you have as a team to really set yourself up for the best success possible.
And now everybody's going to blame me when their videos don't go viral. I really want to thank you guys for that one. So we've got a few minutes left.
That could be the next conversation, is how to go viral.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, gosh.
There we go. We're all set.
If we could have that conversation, and sell it, we'd all be multimillionaires. So two quick things I want to touch on before we go, while we have a few minutes left. First, we've talked a lot about establishing rules, about understanding clients' needs, putting in those those placeholders and those limits. When do you break them? When do you break your own rules? When do you say, okay, I know that this is how we said things were going to go, but now we're going to break it because we need X?
I think when technology changes and any kind of infrastructure updates or platform updates happen, you know, sometimes it's on that more technical side. Sometimes it's, wow, our strategy was completely off and it didn't work, so now we have to try something else. Social media is still a very new medium, and you know, it's been around for about 10 years as a marketing platform, but we're constantly learning and evolving and having new platforms and different kinds of sites pop up every day. I mean, think about 3 years ago when Pinterest wasn't here and Google Plus wasn't here. You know, Facebook and Twitter were dominating that space, and now look at Vine and the way that LinkedIn has grown and all the different functionalities that these platforms have and the different reasons why they have them. And then, you know, think about the future and how all of that plays into your strategy. Well, you can't plan for some of that stuff. So looking at, you know, something, doing a trial and error, A/B testing sort of strategy for your content, for your geo-targeting, for your, you know, whatever it might be. There's always a way to test, and I like to call it rinse and repeat. So you try something, if it works, you put it into your docket of, great, this is definitely effective for our brand or company, and if it doesn't work, you rinse it and you repeat and you try a different methodology to see if it's going to work.
Exactly, and I would just say, looking at digital as a whole, as much as we all wish it was, and the way that people talk about digital now, people think it's a science and that everything can be measured, everything can be tracked. And the reality is it's more of a blending of the art and science, and the art comes in when you have to make changes on the fly. You can't control competitors, you can't control the market, you can't control what's happening in the digital space. This is an ever-evolving ecosystem that we're essentially just along for the ride. So best laid plans, you have to be flexible, or else you're going to be one of those companies, or your campaign is going to be one of those ones that just doesn't work. I mean, you have to be able to move on the fly, and things, you can set up the best campaign, but if you're not monitoring or watching what's happening or really keeping tabs on the market, you're going to be one of the ones that starts great and then fizzles out. So constantly evolving any digital campaign, whether it's social, display, video, you have to optimize, you have to update, and you really have to stay on, like with your campaign has to be monitored, and you have to keep your eye on what's going on, or else you're going to fall behind.
Absolutely. All right, so for our last question, and I would say that you probably don't want to use any specific names, but any horror stories that you guys feel comfortable sharing that might be good indications of things that didn't go as well as you planned, or perhaps you set the expectations and maybe not the way it should have been. You know, I mean, feel free again, you can say no thank you, but I just thought that any examples, any specific examples might be good for our audience to hear about, you know, when things work and when they don't, and you know, lessons learned.
I'll just give a quick example, obviously not going to give any names or anything, but it's more of just
brand X.
Yeah, going back to our ongoing education example, and when to say no and when to fake it till you make it. When it comes to programmatic display buying and the new age of video where you're buying sets of data and targeting that way. In the past, our campaigns have not really used that. Client brought it up one day, and we said, oh, we have experience with that, and we're going to give you a POV. Well, we didn't really have much experience. It's a new space that's constantly evolving, and what we did is we took our time. We didn't come out and just give them an idea or pretend that we knew what we were talking about when we didn't. We just kind of pushed out that deadline for when that POV was coming and gave us time to meet with reps, understand the space, do a deep dive to make sure that we gave them the information they needed. And that's when they kept asking for an update, when are we going to get that POV on programmatic video and programmatic display, you just have to massage around it. And we took our time, and we ended up feeling really comfortable with our recommendation and working with a partner that we ended up doing great work and driving great ROI for our client. So it wasn't necessarily a horror story, but it was more getting put on the spot and not necessarily having the experience, but we took our time, got the experience, and then ended up really delivering for the client.
That's a great way to put it, and I think the word massage was like the perfect transitionary word that you could have used there, Ryan, because it's like you have to just like knead it out and make sure like everything's okay and continue on. I have an example. I had a huge global organization, nonprofit that I worked with, who had over 2.5 billion Facebook fans. However, their Facebook fans were declining. And they didn't understand why. And we had to explain that their sister company actually was making them lose followers because people would go to, well, it's the parent company of the nonprofit would make them go to that page, and then they wouldn't understand what our page was for. So it took 6 months for me to really educate and train the client to understand that there was the company that was doing this before me was not doing the right social media strategy for that community, and that they really were hurting themselves by buying followers and doing advertising and all these other things to get to 2.5 billion fans, and that we had to slowly but surely kind of re-strategize while educating the client on, you know, we might be losing a few hundred followers per week now, but you still have 2.5 billion fans, and we're going to continually, you know, educate the community as well to get you to a safer place where you're giving and purposing out valuable content that people actually want to see, as well as education on what specifically the company, the nonprofit of the parent company does. So letting people know once or twice a week, hey, this is the organization and here's its purpose. This is who we're affiliated with. You know, here's our motto. Here's images and quotes from our team. Here's us out in the community. Like actually showing who the brand is, and then training that audience to understand if that's not who you want to be and the content that you want to see, then like it's okay, because this might not be the page that you should be a fan of. So if you dislike us, it's fine. We're doing kind of like a community cleanse, and it took 6 months, and now, you know, 9, 12 months later, we're finally at a continual growth process of gaining and attracting the right fans without any paid advertising or support or anything. And our fans are actively engaging 50 to 70% more each day on our content. And so I literally put together research articles and white papers and POV documents and strategy decks almost every single month for this client to try and educate them, and they just kept coming back and saying, why are we losing followers? Where are our fans going? Why don't they like our page? Why aren't we growing? And it took a while, and it was a hard battle, but it ended up working out in the best way possible because we re-strategized, worked in what was going to be the best outcome for them and the content that their community should have, and then it ended up working out. So, you know, it was one of those things where the community was failing and there was a disconnect, but with the right time, strategy, and education, we got the client to understand why that was happening, but also the community to understand the purpose and intention of the brand. So bad into good, positive conversations, or negative conversations and negative followers into positive fans and conversations all around.
You guys are too upbeat. I was really pulling for like a just a things fell apart kind of. Fine. Let's end on a positive.
If you don't like the question, change the question.
I have another example if you want a bad tweet gone.
No, it's all right. Listen,
okay.
I appreciate that actually that you guys found ways to make those negative situations and positive. I think it ends the talk on a good note, that ultimately these challenges that we experience and the difficulties that we can encounter in these moments can be turned into positive things. It's just a matter of finding the right strategy and technique to make that happen. So I would recommend, though, that for anybody who's looking for a little bit of schadenfreude in their day, there's a great Tumblr called Clients from Hell, where they're constantly putting out submissions that are just people who deal with clients who don't understand how to communicate, don't know how to set expectations. It's a little bit of a freelancer and consultant to FML in the best possible way. Anyway, with that, we have run a little bit over. I appreciate everybody sticking with us towards the end. Again, my name is Jason Nellis from Overachiever Media. You can find us at overachievermedia.com, at OverMeCo. We do a great weekly newsletter that I think people might enjoy if you are interested in signing up. You can also check out our blog. And of course, thank you to our incredible panelists for their time and energy. I know you guys are incredibly busy, and the opportunity you give us to hear from you is not taken lightly. So thank you very much in that regard.
Oh, thanks
and
for having
just
us.
really quick before we go, obviously we got maybe the best future panel topic of how to create viral videos from this. But anyone out there, if there's a topic that you'd like to see us cover, please let us know. Use the hashtag #DDManage, and we'll compile all that and let us know what you're interested in. Thanks for joining us on your Wednesday. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.